Lindsay, good to
Hello.
see you. Glad to have you here today.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. I've been liking the podcast, so it's interesting to be on the other side of it now.
Yeah, very cool. Let me start off by giving the audience an introduction for you so they can get a little understanding of some of your background. Lindsay Reynolds Augustine, you're a licensed and board certified creative arts therapist. You use the power of visual expression to support healing, especially with people navigating trauma and major life transitions. You're deeply rooted in trauma-informed care with years of hands-on experience. You're all about meeting people where they are and creating safe and supportive spaces for growth. You're a creative professional with a passion for storytelling, and through your own design studio, Say Reynolds Design, you explore branding, visual storytelling, collaborative design work that uplifts meaningful narratives. You also utilize your design experience to help your colleagues create portfolios and share their professional offerings with others. You're a multidisciplinary artist and designer, and your creative work bridges the worlds of fine art, graphic design, and therapeutic expression, highlighting how art can inform both identity and connection. You're a passionate mental health advocate, whether in the therapy room or out in the community. You're dedicated to making mental health care more creative, compassionate, and accessible. And the reason why I wanted to have you on and some of your colleagues is to give creatives another perspective of what they might be able to do with their talents if they come to a point in life where they feel like they need to pivot. The work that they've been doing isn't as meaningful to them anymore. There's always another option where they can shift into something like what you do with art therapy and help others in that way. So what I want to start off with is a very simple question, but it's always my first, and that is, where were you born and what was life like as a kid for Lindsay?
Simple answer for that, because I grew up on Long Island my whole life. No moving, no big family splits. I feel like that's becoming the minority answer in a way. And I know you'd have a tendency to do sibling order when we talk about this. Mom and dad grew up Selden, Long Island, which is in smack dab in the middle. I'm the oldest of four. I have two younger sisters and then a younger brother. So the brother's the baby. Dad, blue collar worker. My grandfather, blue collar worker. My mom was a budget analyst for health department.
Okay.
So not exactly a creative upbringing for
Okay.
sure. Came out of left field for that, although I do have family members that are very talented in that regard. And ironically, I think as I've had the privilege of growing older and getting to know family members from an adult to adult, you get that perspective of, oh, they're humans too. They're not just your parents.
Yeah.
I think a lot of my family had creative passions and endeavors that were very internalized and not supported. And I think that was important for me realizing that once I got later on in my education and career, that became really big for me.
Yeah.
Is there talking about elementary school?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
want to do that too? Skipped pre-K, went to
Nice.
kindergarten at a place called, my parents enrolled me in this place called Happy Acres. It was very off the beaten path. It had a pony. Like that's all I really remember about it. Is that was it's a separate building in the woods with a pony. I went there for kindergarten, and then my three siblings after me proceeded to go to Catholic school for kindergarten. So I don't know what the switch up there was, but I was very lucky that I didn't have to go
Yeah.
through that type of schooling. My sister's very close with me in age. She's only 18 months younger than me.
Okay.
Then the third one is 3 years younger than me. And then my little brother is 6 years younger than me. So there's only a 6 year age gap
Okay.
between the four of us.
Good. With being able to go to a place in pre-K and starting out or not pre-K, but kindergarten, and starting out with an animal around, did you guys interact with the animals at all, or was it just into the classroom and do the work?
Oh yeah, it was a pre-K kindergarten, so there were some pre-K kids there. Yes, the recess was a small playground in the stable, so you could pet. It was just a
Nice.
daily occurrence. My aunt had horses growing up too. She lived in Pennsylvania though, so we would see her a few times a year. She had 10 horses, acres and acres of land, so horse
Okay.
wasn't really new for me. My sister has a deep kinship with horses. I do not. I got thrown from a horse when I was like 10 or 11, and
Yeah.
then that was it for me.
Yeah,
But yeah, the horse, I don't know why I remember that having a pony. It's just, it's a unique, went to this random school in the woods that had a horse.
for sure.
So,
Did you have, I was gonna say, did you have any sense of connection to nature at that point?
yes, we camped growing up. My dad was a big camper, Boy Scout, and I like the river. But growing up on the island, you're always near the beach. You're always going to the beach. My nan lives by the water, went to the beach every single day
Cool.
growing up. And then when we were with her in the summer, it was a thing she always talked about.
Yeah.
But I'm more of a woods forest
Okay.
person.
Yeah.
So growing up on an island where everyone is always go to the beach, be in the sun, be in the sand, be in the ocean. It's not that I don't like that, but I was definitely more of a go to the woods to find your peace and solitude and
Right.
spirituality
Yeah.
type of person for sure. I do view horses as a spiritual animal as well. Just the symbolism behind horses, the strength behind them. We're already getting to the mental health field, but the fact that there's whole equestrian
Yeah.
therapy, equine therapy is just a beautiful thing to witness.
Yeah.
So I do. I think those animals definitely have, and dogs like have that compassion and for just human connection and mental health overall.
Yeah. It amazes me how quick potential shifts can take place when you introduce an animal into a person's life that may not have had an animal or been able to experience animals. And the energy shift in and of itself is just, it's amazing to see. With going into elementary school, were you a shy kid? Were you outgoing? Or what were you like in terms of personality?
Definitely more introverted.
Okay.
I loved school, threw myself into school all the time. Socialization part was in elementary school, it was okay. I think it got tougher as I got a little older. But I loved school. I was always focused on school. I was that quote nerd child who was always reading, always wanted to get the answers right, wanted to do every subject, would have stayed and learned more if she could have. I'd be a student my whole life if I could.
Mm,
The whole nine. Advanced classes, would rather be sitting learning than be outside
right.
at school. Unless it was soccer. I had this weird dynamic of I think this is going to be a theme
Okay.
during during this session, this pull of feeling like it's okay to not just be one thing.
Yeah.
So on one hand, I was very much into reading, learning, taking in everything I possibly could, but also being a really big athlete and
Yeah.
always wanting to be playing sports, thriving in gym class, recess, sports teams, and then art, just loving art classes from the get-go, finding a nice creative outlet, even though I never felt like I was, quote, good or
Yeah.
natural at art. You can see when your art's hanging with other people's, even when you're young. Mine doesn't look like that.
Yeah.
It was more for me about the enjoyment in creating, like getting lost. I didn't have this lingo at the time, but being in a flow state when I'm working, even as 6, 7,
Yeah.
8, just the act of how colors react and how line and texture and shape and how different art materials feel and the capabilities of each one and how it made me feel. I just was always very into that. So I had this trifecta very early on of art, athlete, reader,
Yeah.
learner
Yeah.
type person. And I think as you grow up, whether it's peer pressure, whether it's societal pressure, parental pressure, it's pick one.
Yeah.
Like, which one are you? Instead of, oh, you can be all of these things. So I foresee you're going to be able to probably point out patterns before I can as we go through this of either making a choice to be one versus be all.
Yeah.
And I think that comes into the reasons for why I do what I do. But it
Yeah.
took me a long time to get there.
Yeah. What, how young did you start playing soccer?
4 years old.
Four. Okay.
Yeah, from the get-go. And that was a bond I had with my dad. My dad was a goalkeeper. I did not play
Nice.
goalie, really.
Was a keeper.
Oh, nice.
Yep. My entire,
Last line of defense.
yep.
And from what I hear from all my family members, my dad was exceptionally talented
Cool.
at it. But again, another theme that I see both as a therapist, but also on your podcast, our parents have their own stories and their own struggles, and sometimes they get passed on to us, whether they know it or not, and
Yeah,
other times they get hidden, and you're fighting something you don't even know you're fighting. So
for sure.
yes, there was always that bond of I'm playing the sport that my dad played, and I know it makes him happy to see me play, and I want to make him proud in that aspect. But also, I genuinely did love to play soccer. It wasn't that dynamic of, oh, I'm playing this because my parents forcing me.
Yeah,
It bonded us. I think some of when you're the oldest and then you have to give up that alone time to three more kids, and the last one's a boy, almost that, oh,
yeah,
where's my place? I used to be like dad's boy until
yeah,
he actually
exactly.
boy. So it was a connection of when I got to spend alone time with him and he's driving me in his international scout. I think he had a 73
Yeah,
pickup and bringing me to soccer, listening to Johnny Cash and AC/DC. Those are stuff you don't even need pictures of. That's just burned into your brain of that's my connection I have with this person.
for sure.
So I'm so grateful for it. I played it all the way up until college. I don't know if I'm getting ahead of
Yeah, you're
the
fine. Go ahead.
story.
Yeah, you're
I tried out to be on my college's soccer team and actually didn't make it. She gave me really nice feedback, but I had a scholarship offer to place at a D3 school and opted not to because I wanted to pursue arts as
okay.
my career and as my degree. And I remember that being a really big decision for me because it was this, am I letting my dad down because I know he would love to see me play college ball
Yeah,
versus this is my passion, the art stuff, which people don't really connect with me on. They didn't really understand it, but it clicked for me. And that was like my first big decision of I have to do this for me.
yeah.
It is a huge part of who I am. And I'll play soccer recreationally on the side, which I did do.
Okay,
Uh,
cool.
but yeah, soccer's a big part of my life. We'll revisit.
Yeah, nice.
Yes. You're going
That's
to be hearing more about soccer for
well,
sure.
that was going to be my next question. Did you play rec soccer or travel team soccer through elementary and into middle school?
Yep. So elementary school, there was no like school team, but I played like recreationally. I think intramural. There's the word I'm looking
Got it.
for several years. I had a wonderful coach who was just so supportive, so good with kids. And that's a theme too in my life is like the coaches and the teachers I've had were my guideposts and affected me in such a mentorship, love of learning. You have talent here. I feel like I really owe those people. So for all the people out there who step up, whether you're using your mental health to be a coach or your creativity to be a teacher or a professor, you're doing God's work. You change lives more than even if you don't hear about it. Fantastic coach for soccer. Middle school, I joined a premier team where you're travel like intense. You're traveling to New Hampshire or Rhode Island to play one game on the weekend
Yeah.
so that scouts can start looking at you, which is insane to me, thinking I was 11 and 12 and your parents are already worried. Like some of these parents are intense.
Oh
Have
yeah.
you been in leagues like that where
Oh
it's
yeah.
just, oh my gosh, it's like the parents are more intense than the kids?
Yes, for sure.
And yeah, you see now as a therapist, I'm like, oh, you're trying to push your dreams on your kid right now. We got to peel it back because some of these kids didn't even want to be doing it,
Yeah.
which is a sad thing. But yeah, that was too intense for me. I did that for about 2 years. And I remember looking at my dad and just saying, I was wrecked with anxiety. Another connection I have with my dad. I would just be sick, like nauseous, refuse, didn't want to go, would be crying in the back seat, just not wanting to do this. And it was a sport that I loved playing. So it didn't really make sense to my parents why something that you love playing is causing you so much emotional turmoil.
Yeah.
So going into middle school, I joined the middle school team, switched over to a travel team at that point that was not premier, just local on
Yeah.
the island, a lot less pressure. And middle school, same thing. Eighth grade, they pulled me up to play high school ball, let you get a feel for the JV team. So I think that was part of what I was getting at with socially. It was hard because the only way I really was able to make friends was through sports,
Okay.
like a natural bonding, right?
Yeah.
Commonality, you're going through the same schedule, you're at the same school. It's like friendships of convenience. But then when you're in eighth grade getting pulled up to play high school ball, now you're with like
Yeah.
17-year-olds, 18-year-olds, and you're 13, and you're missing out on the people who are in middle school with you. So I felt pulled in that regard. I'm with these huge adults, it looks like to me,
Yeah. Yeah.
playing a sport that I love. But again, I'm like, I don't know anybody here. And the only thing I have to rest on is that they thought I was talented enough to be here. So it's like this constant having to prove yourself
Yeah.
through your skill set
Yeah.
versus who you are as a person and just relating to people on a personal level.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Did you see yourself trying to excel so that you could be just as good as the 17, 18-year-olds?
Oh yeah, because I that and now again can look at that with the perspective now of,
Right.
oh,
Yeah.
you wanted to be accepted, and the only way you thought you could do that was to show them I'm one of you and I can run with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes literally. And then you just deal with teenagers. To any coach, teacher who works with like even parents, teenage girls, let me tell you, ruthless, ruthless. So yeah, you have people who respond to you outwardly, let you know we don't want you here, whether that's because the talent level is threatening or you're
You're
just
just
not
not
our
in our
friend group.
grade.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And then you had other people who like you earn their respect. It's like the very old school, you pay your dues. That's how I was raised. You do the hard work, you
Yeah.
go up the ladder, you pay
Yeah.
your dues. It's not going to be like this forever. So that's the approach I took. And I had parents and friends to remind me they brought you here for a reason.
Yeah.
This isn't forever. And
Right.
that's been a mantra to help me with all of my struggles is this isn't going to be forever.
You mentioned that you had quite a few teachers that had impacted you. Who was the first teacher that you
Ooh,
had
good
to
question.
really realize that?
My fourth grade teacher's teacher, Canis, I think was her name, fourth grade teacher, for her positivity. I think what stood out to me about her is we had this thing where if she observed that I was having a hard time or we were struggling, we would say, keep on rolling. We're going to keep on rolling. And then she would do this. And that's very simple. But yeah, she stands out to me because even when we'd have parent teacher conferences, if it would come up that I was having a hard time, it's, yeah, but what do? We keep on rolling. We keep on moving. But the teacher coach hybrids, I think, are the best ones, like the ones that
For
teach you,
sure.
but then they're also a coach.
Yeah.
The biggest impact is probably Midge Ferraro, sixth grade gym teacher. I feel like she saw me when I had no idea what to do with myself. I'm the
Yeah.
oldest kid. I'm in middle school for the first time. I'm 10. My elementary school, there were, I think, I want to say 9 elementary schools in my school district.
Oh, wow.
And in my elementary school, the way the district lines were drawn, I went to an elementary school where I think like 80% of that school went to a different middle school than I did. So
Mm.
even the close friends that I had managed to make didn't go to my school. So
Yeah.
it's like starting all over again. But this gym teacher took me aside and said, "Why don't you like be my assistant? I also coach volleyball. I coach the girls' middle school volleyball team. Have you ever played volleyball before? No, I'm a soccer player. Okay, maybe you need to try out with volleyball and just do that." So I was just her assistant. You can't play sports when you're in sixth grade. At least in my school, you weren't allowed to play sports when you were in
Oh,
sixth grade, but you could be like a team assistant or manager. And I just learned the game,
yeah.
picked it up, practices before school, so you're getting to the gym at 5:30, 6 in the morning, and it's that grunt work. It's collect the balls and help
Right.
the girls get ready and clean up after them and fill water bottle, like that whole the whole start at the bottom work. But I picked up on the game really quickly and she would give me lessons and let me work with them during practice. And yeah, she opened up my whole world to a whole new sport. So then volleyball became this other thing where I'm a setter and became team captain by the end of it in 8th grade and found a group of girls that I could just stick with and create a cohort with. And she just taught me it's okay to be quiet, but that doesn't mean you don't deserve to be here. And as I got older, it became mutual. I shared my love of Harry Potter with her. I was a huge Harry Potter nerd, and it shows. But Harry Potter was big at that time.
Yeah.
And I introduced her to the books, and to the point where she started buying we still had them on cassette
Okay.
when I was in middle school. So she would buy them in the cassettes and be listening to them in between teaching. And
Nice.
she would check in with me and be like, "Oh, I'm up to chapter 10." And she would ask me, like, "What's going to happen next?" So as a kid, having that dynamic of, oh, an adult's treating me like an equal. An adult wants to know my opinion. An adult wants to know what I think of a book or how I'm doing,
Yeah.
and not telling me how I'm doing or telling me what I'm going to do. It was a really shift in a relationship dynamic. And volleyball ended up becoming a huge thing for me as well, setting up my future for a lot of different reasons. So I feel like it all goes back to her, and I owe her for that.
That's amazing. Yeah, I always love when I hear about either teachers, coaches, or just older influences that affect a kid's life moving through
Did you
school.
have one that really stands out?
I have one that really stands out, but it was in a negative way. And it was when I went off to college and attempted to get a degree in graphic design. I went to school at Pensacola Christian in Florida. And my first basic drawing class teacher, he literally told my parents at a weekend where all the parents come down to the school and check in and see how you're doing. He told them, you're only ever going to be a B student. So I don't know what he's going to be able to do moving forward. And they told me that and said, you got to do better. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? You're not here. You have no idea what this is like. And then the next project I did after that, I did everything I could to try to make it as perfect as possible. Thought at the very least I should get an A on this. He gave me an A minus, and that was as high as I ever got in his class. But yeah, it was very impactful. It's as clear as day now. But through elementary, I did have another impactful one now that you mentioned it, and as I'm thinking back, second grade, they had a school like a art writing competition. And so everybody had to write a short story and illustrate it. And so at that time, I was looking at comic books and stuff like that. So I thought, all right, this has to be a short story. So it has to be more than one sheet of paper and it has to be folded so you can flip through it. So I created this 4-page story and drew all my illustrations with crayon, and it ended up being selected to go into the district competition. Went out, I was won the first round, and was sent on to the next round. Won the second round, was sent on to the final round, and then I didn't hear anything. And it's been quite a while. I would assume this competition's over by now. What's going on? So I went up to my teacher and I said, "Hey, is there any more news about what my story might have done?" And she goes, "Yes, I have to tell you that I'm sorry because I didn't send it to the final round for you." And I was like, "Oh, wow." So at that point, I felt like I couldn't trust my teachers. I couldn't trust them with my talent, with what I could do, with what I was sharing, any of that stuff. So that's probably the earliest experience where it was like, oh man, I remember that teacher.
Yeah.
But it
And
was
yet at
in,
the same time, it's almost okay. So I didn't get it not because of my talent was deficient. It's because
yeah,
my teacher couldn't follow a time.
exactly.
So there's a little bit of emotional release, a little less of a burden, but then I hear you, it's the switch of, okay, I'm gonna mistrust now instead.
Yeah, for sure. For
Mm.
sure. With going into middle school, had you started picking up any art classes to where you were like really into them?
I had art offered in
Okay.
school. I went to public school, but nothing intense. I wasn't seeking art outside of school. I craved it when I had it.
Yeah.
It was arguably the best period of the day. But besides that, didn't really pursue it. It was something very silent only for me that I was doing. I would bring drawings home and stuff, but not something I was even looked into at home. With home, it was, oh, do you want to join soccer? Like every kid had something. It was like,
Yeah.
what sport do you want to do? Or what do you want to do? Dance? Whatever. But it was never oh, do you want to take art classes or do you want to do this? It was very focused on athletics the whole time.
Athletics. Yeah.
Mm. So art was just my thing that I did quietly for myself to figure things out. And even with art, I'm just learning.
Okay.
I had a teacher, sixth and seventh grade, Mr. Zinna, who has since passed. He passed really early too, but he really taught me that. That was my first experience with learning 2D and 3D perspective drawing.
Okay.
And again, I knew my work wasn't good like, compared to other people's work and compared to what other people were able to do. People just seem to pick it up easier. But for me, it was more so learning the technicality of it, learning ways you can change it, learning meaning and metaphor and symbolism. And I just, I loved it. And I'm jumping ahead here, but I mentioned him because later on down the road, when I finally figured out I wanted to be an art therapist and I went to grad school and I'm in a graduate program, I meet the chair of the program, and she invited everybody to her house as like a meet and greet, meet your fellow graduate students. And she had this beautiful patio in the back next to her pool. And she had a shed that had been converted into her studio, like her office to see clients. She was a practicing therapist at the time. And I'm admiring this like brickwork. I go into the studio. We got a tour of her office space, and there's a picture of my art teacher, Mr. Zinna,
Oh, wow.
on her desk. And granted, this is 20 years later. And like I hadn't thought about him in a while, and I saw him. It just when you see an image, it just
Yeah.
comes like rushing back. So I immediately went up to her. I said, "How did you know Mr. Zinna?" And she just immediately started crying. And I was so overwhelmed. I didn't mean to upset you. I
Yeah.
had already known that he had passed a few years after I graduated middle school. But yeah, she said that she taught him when he went to art school. She was his teacher
Oh, wow.
and that he had a side business. In addition to being a teacher, he was like a bricklayer and he
Okay.
laid the brick that I
Ah,
had been admiring that was around her pool in her backyard.
nice.
Fast forward 20 years and the head of my program that I choose to be in to become an art therapist, she was the teacher for my middle school art teacher that encouraged me to do it regardless of if I thought I wasn't good enough to do it. So that
Wow.
really weird kinship of you can't plan something like that.
For sure.
It's just that was also a mark to me. You're on the right path. Let's do this. Maybe this is where you were meant to be.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So during the time of middle school, shifting into high school, you're doing soccer, shifting into volleyball. How was home life at that point? Because now you've got your siblings who are there as well,
Mhm.
based on the 6 year span. What is it like at at house in terms of the environment of family?
I think our parents had to be very good at multitasking and splitting.
Sure.
When you have two parents, four kids, doesn't take a mathematician to figure out that's difficult to navigate. My paternal grandparents, my nan and pop, were very close to us. They lived about half an hour away, still do, technically. Fortunate
Yeah.
enough that they're still here. They had my dad very young. My nan had my dad when she was 18, 19.
Okay.
So they were very active in helping raise us too. Like my nan would come pick us up at school and everyone thought that she was my mom. She was like a 52-year-old grandmother.
Yeah.
But I think we all had our own interests. The kids are all very different, which I'm grateful for. We all have our own personalities. We all did our own things. I was the soccer girl. My sister Mallory did dance and then she did karate and she's social. Mallory is like the opposite of me in every way. She's blonde haired, blue eyed, wonderfully like funny and will interact with anyone, wants everybody to have a good time, always inviting everybody to everywhere. Had a lot of friends. Erin was this like animal healer, just like beyond smart. Everything came really natural. Like she would just slack off in school and then read the book the night before and get 100.
Oh,
She's so smart. Own like marches to the beat of her own drummer, was always into the animals, was a very healing, caring person. Like when we were sick, I remember she always took care of us when we were, she only wanted to play nurse and always took care of us. And then Scotty, the youngest one, was like this. He was like this terror child in the beginning, had a lot of energy, couldn't really find his place. He tried baseball for a little while, tried football for a little while, and then that faded a little bit. But yeah, very different personalities. So it was always a split. Which two are you going to be with? Like two and two. And based on people's practice schedules, school schedules, doctor appointment schedules, it's I'm taking these two and you're taking these two. It's how it's going to work. But my parents made a note of we had a set, we were a like a typical we eat dinner together
okay.
type of family. Once everybody gets home from practice, we are sitting down, having a meal at the table. We're talking about our days, what's going on. And then if we could, it's like homework and watch TV together type of thing.
All right.
Uh, and I'm grateful for that. They really worked hard to keep a family unit. My parents are very family oriented people. They both
Mhm.
come from very family oriented families. They're very much about family is everything
Yeah. Yeah.
for them. And they instilled that in us.
Cool. It's nowadays, it seems like it's not a common thing that a family unit is as tight as that and is makes it a point to make sure that there's a togetherness.
Yeah, and I think even if people are trying to do that, well, there's just things that happen now that there's cell phones now, and like the idea of even if at the table people are on their phones, and it's a very just put it away, be here in the moment, and share a little bit.
Yeah.
Even if we're all just saying, "Oh, it was good," and then we're moving on.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. In high school, did you did you start saying where you could excel even more playing soccer and or volleyball in terms of, all right, I think I want to try and focus on these a little bit more, put my energy into these.
I had to choose because in high school, volleyball and soccer are the same season, so you can't do both for the school team.
Yeah.
And I just stuck with soccer because it was my first love, but also I was already playing varsity. I was a freshman playing varsity
Yeah.
already.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give up a varsity sport to play volleyball where I would have been on JV, even though I had friends in volleyball. It was very different.
Yeah.
They were not the same. But ironically, the way we ended up shifting was pretty much the whole volleyball team also ended up playing softball.
Okay.
So then I had a coach, a gym teacher, again, gym teacher who was like, "Why don't you play softball?" I said, "Because I don't like softball and I've never played it. And all of my friends have been playing softball. The way I played soccer, they played softball. Like they were playing
Okay.
softball since they were little,
Yeah.
t-ball up until they were all very good at it, invested in it. Parents were driving them all over the place. And I was like, that's too intense for me. I can't just show up as a 16-year-old and play softball. But I did because I wanted to be with my friends. I wanted to try out something where I'm at least getting to hang out with them, even if I don't really like this sport or know what I'm doing. I've never held a bat in my life. But yeah, even that caused problems because softball ended up being, I don't want to say easy because I'm not discrediting the athleticism it takes to play a sport,
Yeah.
but between running, catching, hitting a ball, it was didn't take long to get me there
Oh,
to the point where again, same politics. People are like, "Oh, I don't want to. We're not friends now because
yeah.
you're good at this and now you're starting and I'm not." Like the social politics of the whole thing. "Oh, my daughter's been playing softball since she's 4 and this girl just started." And it makes you want to feel small. I think that was my one of my first instances of shrinking myself
Yeah.
for sake of wanting to be friends or being accepted by people instead of just embracing you have a talent and it's okay to have a talent and them processing how they feel that you're starting and they're not is not a burden you have to be holding. But I definitely did. And I think that's something a lot of people experience and end up carrying for a very long time
Sure.
in their life and sometimes never realize that they're holding something that wasn't theirs to hold to begin with.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's very interesting too that you got the opportunity to play volleyball, didn't have any real interest in it other than just helping out because the coach was like, "Hey, why don't you come over here and do this?" Got into it, were able to quickly get a grasp on it. Same thing with softball. You get offered the opportunity, you don't really want to do it because you love soccer so much, and you start excelling at it to the point where you're bumping some of the other players that have been doing it for much longer than you have, bumping them out of a space or a position. And it takes a different mindset to be able to do that. And the reason I say that is because I have a similar scenario with athletics, and meaning that the school, I started off going to public school up until fourth grade, had an opportunity to go into a program which was called Project Plus, where it was for students who were excelling. And that next year, I was going to be able to spend part of my day at the high school, though I was in fourth grade. And my parents decided, no, we're going to pull you out of public school. We're going to take you over to this private Christian school, put you in here. And I knew some of the people that were there, but I only knew them because of seeing them at church on Sundays. So it wasn't like I was around them every day. So I was about to lose all my friends, have to go to this new school. It's completely different than anything I've experienced. And it was all self-study too. So we were sitting in these little cubicles where you would have to finish 12 booklets per grade. So you get 12 for social studies, 12 for English, 12 for math, 12 for science.
Okay. You could do them at your own pace.
Yep.
Interesting. Okay.
Yep. It was called an ACE school, which stood for Accelerated Christian Education. But for me, it was just drudgery. I didn't want to be doing school stuff. But one of the interesting elements of that is after the first year, we started putting together a school athletic teams. So in fifth grade, I'm starting to play soccer, basketball, and softball with seniors. So I had to learn very quickly how to play at their level and compete at their level because we're playing other schools who have all seniors on a team, and I'm a fifth grader. Fortunately for me, I was fast. So I didn't have a problem with being able to keep up with them. For whatever reason, I could run like a rabbit almost. Didn't ever really get tired of doing that. So I was able to excel that way for basketball and softball. Soccer, was immediately put into the keeper position because I was tall. At fifth grade, I think I was 5'10" in fifth grade. So I was tall enough where I could just reach up and touch the top bar. And I was fast. I can move back and forth across the net pretty quickly. But I can relate to having to excel just because you're in a different position than what everybody else is. And it also too, for me, it was like a game of, all right, I can watch them, figure out how they're doing what they're doing, and I can see weaknesses at certain points, and I would try to do better in those areas where I could eventually beat them at if we're playing one-on-one games of basketball or softball. I could do different things that I could excel more than they were able to. So that's interesting that you've had those athletic experiences because I think that eventually plays into a mindset as you get older about how you navigate through things.
Yeah, and I think embracing the type of, I got lucky, I'm a visual learner.
Yeah.
So being able to observe how people play, or if I'm watching, not even them, but I'm watching a professional game at home, it's you can learn like kinesthetics, right? Like body language. And when this person has this form, they
Yep.
throw faster than someone who throws this way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that helped me is because I've always been a curious person. I've always been a learner and an observer. And that I think that helped me. Yes, there has to be some level of athleticism, but it's also just like being a sponge, especially when you're younger, you can take in so much more.
Yeah.
And then as you get older and older, it's typically harder to learn newer things and rewire your brain. Not that it can't be done. I know you've talked about I think you had Wendy Powell on and she was talking about the Enneagrams, and I'm
Yep.
also an Enneagram 5.
Oh, cool. Okay.
Yeah. So when you were saying that, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's me too. Because immediately when I was listening to her, I'm like, oh, I have to do this and see where I'm at here. So yeah, I'm a 5 too. And I think that's where the socialization part got really hard for me is being in a team, learning, being tired, like physically tired, mentally tired from learning, but then also just this feeling of being around people all the time. I naturally did need just time to reset,
Yep.
time for myself. And that's where, like, if I need to be alone and create, or I need to be alone and read a book, or I
Yeah.
need to be alone in nature, being left alone. And it's not because I'm isolative or I'm antisocial. It's just I genuinely need time to just check in with myself and recharge
Yeah.
and see how I'm doing
Right.
mentally, spiritually, emotionally.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very interesting. I don't usually ask this, but what's your astrological sign?
I'm a Pisces.
Pisces. Okay.
Water sign. Yeah.
Water. Interesting. All right. That's another thing that I'm into is astrological birth charts. I have an astrologer that I work with at least a couple of times a year. And she's 94 years old. She does everything by hand, all the calculations by hand. And she's a third generation astrologer. So when I first met her and learned about my astrological birth chart, I was like, oh my God, like, why didn't I not try and figure this out sooner?
It
There's so
opened up
many
things for
questions.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So shifting towards the end of high school, all right, you've been playing soccer for quite a while now. You said you got offered a scholarship for a D3 school to go and play. Are you also thinking about a particular curriculum that you might want to go into? Are you thinking you want to go into an art program at all?
I decided on that to the shock of my parents. Because again, kept art very like this needs to be for me.
Yeah.
But yes, I ended up going to the College of St. Rose, which unfortunately, as of I think a year ago, is not a college anymore.
Okay.
But I went to tour there because they were a D2, they were the top D2 women's soccer team school at
Nice.
that point in time. And I got to try out for the team. They set up an overnight for me. I met some of the girls on the team. I stayed with them in their dorm, got the whole college experience, toured the campus. So this school is in the middle of Albany.
Okay.
Um, so I got to see the city a little bit, tried out with the team, and I thought it went really well. The girls were very nice to me. They were like, "Oh, you're probably going to make this. You did really well at your tryout." And then the next morning, I get called in. My dad was with me, and she sat me down and said, "I don't really know if you're the best fit. Like, you're a good player, don't get me wrong, but in terms of like the pace and the style of play that this team has, I don't think you were picking up on it
Yeah.
that fast." And that was such a blow
Oh,
to
wow.
me
Yeah.
as someone who learned really fast and picked up athletics so easily. And then the sport I've been playing my whole life, being told, not even by D1, by D2, that
Yeah.
she didn't think I could keep up. And was looking at my paperwork and she said, "Oh, you've written down that if you were to go here, you're also interested in being in the arts program at the school." I said, "Yeah." And "I'm just letting you know that with our intense schedule and like travel schedule and like the training schedule that we upkeep, there's no way you're going to be able to do both." She's like, "So that's another reason why I'm like weighing the two." I've had students try to do both and they've had to change their major.
Wow.
And that blew my mind too. There's people playing college ball that are changing their long-term career goals.
Yeah.
Play school ball for you for 4 years. No one, you're not going to go professional
Right.
after playing D2 ball. But that kind of blew my mind too. But because the girls had shown me the school and gave me a tour, and I got to see the art studio, which was downtown in Albany. It was a separate building from the campus. I just fell in love with it. I still remember the smell and the feeling of walking into the printmaking studio for the first time. I'd never heard of printmaking. I had never done it before,
Yeah.
but just walking into that room and oh, the turpentine smell is still, but yeah, there was something about, have you ever like a spiritual where you just feel something physically
Um,
when you're in a place of this place is going to be important to me and
yeah.
I need to be here? That's how I felt walking into that studio space. And so it cushioned the blow a little bit of you're not going to make this team, but I still looked at my parents. I'm like, I still want to go there. Meanwhile, I had another school that would have been local. I would have stayed on Long Island. I would have got to play soccer. I could have stayed at home. My dad was bribing me, I'll get you a car. You could commute to school and play soccer and be here. I just knew it. There was just something very visceral and deep in being in that studio space that I'm like, I need to go to art school. I need to do this. And because I was doing early application, it gave me a year to prep for that because I didn't have a portfolio.
Okay. Okay.
It's not like I was actively like, I'm going to go to art school and do this. So I had to really create a portfolio very quickly, which I went to an art teacher in high school and I asked him to help me, and he did. And then my mom took me to in New York City when they have those big, like all the art schools come together. I think it was at probably SVA, trying to think, probably, or Pratt, one of those, like
Right.
FIT, pick one.
Yeah.
And they had this big, like, art higher education application where you could bring your portfolio and get critiqued by all these art schools and apply, like, on the spot to be in
Yeah.
the program. And I'm here with my new portfolio, all excited. My mom actually took me in, not my dad. I was so nervous. And it was like what you were saying, teach brutal, like critique after critique of just no, like one person straight up saying, you should not apply to art school. Your portfolio is not even close to
Right.
what it needed to be in any of these programs.
Yeah.
And I had to hear that several times from several different people. And that was really terrible. But I still stuck with it. I was like, St. Rose was not at that conference.
Okay.
So I'm like, St. Rose wasn't here to critique my portfolio. So maybe I could try to go there.
Yeah.
So got like an in-person one at the actual school. So a few months later, went back with my portfolio, tried to tweak it based on the critique I got at this thing. I meet with the way that St. Rose did it was faculty. There was like 3 or 4 faculty that had signed on that day to do portfolio reviews. And one of them was the chair of the entire program. And of course, that's the one I end up getting matched with. I'm like, okay. And as soon as I saw that's who I got matched with, I looked at my parents. I'm like, I'm not making it into this school. There's no way. But she sat down with me, looked at my work, and I'm bracing for the same thing. Oh, your skill set's not there.
Yeah.
And instead, she asked me questions. Instead of dropping into critique and statements, it was questions of curiosity and
Nice.
wanting to know my intention behind the artwork and seeing similar themes in some of my pieces and what I was trying to get at with what I was doing. And
Yeah.
I'm rambling on and on as I usually do. And then she just stops me and she says, okay, as a professor, there's things you can teach and there's things that you can't. She's, I can teach skill set. I can't teach passion and I can't teach conceptualization.
Yeah.
And you have the two things that I can't teach. She's, I'm not going to lie to you. Your portfolio is not good. And that's exactly how she said it. Just like your portfolio, she might as well have said your portfolio sucks.
Yeah.
She's, but the way you think about this and talk about your artwork, you have a mind for this. I think you might want to consider going into graphic design because of the way that you think about things
Okay.
and are able to conceptualize. And I said, I'll think about it. I'm just letting you know, I will accept you into this program. I think you'd be a really good fit. So that's all I needed to hear. It was
Nice.
done deal after that. So I went to the College of St. Rose for 4 years. I got my BFA. I did end up doing graphic design. My first year I was stubborn. I wanted to stick with studio, but I did. I ended up being a graphic designer. Loved as books my whole life, big reader. So I wanted to I thought, oh, I'll be a book cover designer. That's the new goal. And I did an internship at St. Martin's Press. Got to work in the Flatiron building in New York City, which was, even though it was just one summer, it was a hell of an experience.
Cool.
Commuting as a 20-year-old into the city from Long Island and getting to work in such an architectural landmark and
Right.
work with designers who I knew the covers of their books, and it's working next to celebrities over here. Meanwhile, they're just normal people who just go to their job every day. But I
Yeah.
viewed them as so much more than that and got to do work with them and help edit their books and format them. And it was an incredible experience. Very fortunate with my education and the doors that it's opened for me.
Yeah. Again, it's amazing that you got another person who's literally looking at your skill set, but realizing that you're much more than your skill set. And like she said, you got two of the three things that I can't teach you. And that's going to make the difference in allowing you to move into this and potentially excel at it. And it's interesting for me listening to your story because I've seen across multiple aspects of where you've been able to get an opportunity and then excel in it just because there was somebody older willing to give you that encouragement to try it.
And then putting in like knowing you have a lot of work to do
Yeah.
and you got to do it quick,
Yeah.
like really quick, which I respect the grind. So I do want to, her name was Corrine Fall. She actually passed away 3 days before my birthday, my senior year of college.
Oh man.
So again, I was faced with this, and she was like, she became a mentor to me. She also taught screen printing, and she was like the backbone of that place. So many of faculty and staff knew her for so long and were also taught by her. And it was a devastating grief experience, like this collective grief experience for all of us
Sure.
when we lost her. And I think she put so much into that program. That was one of my deepest experiences of how grief and creation are always one. They're always
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
And the act of if you dedicate yourself to being a creator, whether it's through helping people or
Yeah.
creating something, that kind of makes you a little bit immortal in that
Sure.
way because you're passing on whether it's a skill set or just like an emotional support. When you're passing that on to people, you become a part of that person.
Yeah.
So in that way, as long as you're continuing to move forward with her in that mindset, she lives in some way.
Sure.
And that's helped me through some dark times, like going back to reminding of the people that you've lost, live for them
Yeah.
has been very helpful too. Don't squander what she helped give you.
Yeah.
Like we earn what we have, but we've also been given. So find ways to give back as well.
With being able to go into the art classes at college, and you say you graduated with your BFA, was able to complete that, not having the ability to do athletics and have that as a form of release, how did it affect your mindset at college, doing this new thing, working towards this new career potentially, but not having the outlet of athletics at that point? Or were you able to do some outside extracurricular?
Yeah, so when I joined my first year back, my first week when I was there as a freshman, there was intramural soccer,
Okay.
a recreational soccer team that I joined, and that was great too because that's where I found some of my closest friends. And ironically enough, there's a lot of overlap between the sports people and the art people, and I'm like, okay, this is not just a me thing. This is
Yeah.
You don't have to be one or the other. This
Right.
was my meeting of, oh, this happens. Like some of the best athletes on this rec team chose art over being on the team, and now
For
it's
sure.
a nice cohort of people. So I don't think I would have been able to cope very well without that athletic
Outlet.
physical outlet
Yeah.
component. But one thing that undergrad did for me is with a thought process of being an artist is being an athlete. I
Okay.
think being an artist is such a creative, physical act. Like for
Yeah.
some people, if you're like a glass blower, you're a sculptor, there's a physical capability you have with
Yeah.
that. The athleticism and strength it takes to be in a hot room and hold molten glass or sculpt or carve into wood or bend metal and be in a welding state. There's so much athleticism and physicality to it that even if it's not a sport, there's still a physical component to it.
Yeah.
and meeting people who are so dedicated to their craft that they're going to the gym not so that they can win the cup, but so that they can hold this thing for 3 hours while
Right.
they meld it was such a beautiful transition. So always treating my body like it's also a vessel to create
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
was so important. Like your body is not just something to play a sport with, or I think Sir Ken Robinson said thinkers just view their body as something to bring their brain from place to place, and they don't have a connection between their mind and their body.
Yeah.
But that was never the case for me. There was always a very like strong connection between how you're feeling physically and mentally impact one another. There is that somatic connection. So yeah, I was always doing both in college. I had that nice balance between the two. And undergrad was still one of the best times of my life. Like you're getting your curiosity and learning component constantly satiated.
Yeah.
I was making friends for the first time that just liked me for me.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like competitive with them in any way. And I was getting to create things every single day. It was wonderful. Being away from home was interesting. I had never really been away from home before.
Okay.
So it surprised me how much I missed my family. Just because I thought, oh, I'm going to go be independent now and I'm going to go get to see what it's like to be on my own and not have to share things with my siblings and
Yeah.
or watch myself, like just the idea of true independence. Yeah, the day my parents drove away and dropped me off, I was a mess. I was like, oh, I'm really alone here. My parents aren't around the corner. They're a 4 hour drive from
Yeah.
here if I
Yeah.
need them. And the way I coped with it was just really isolating and not speaking to them as much. Because every time I tried to be on the phone with my family, if I heard their voice, I would get so upset. I'm like, oh, I miss you.
Oh, really?
So I just like really immersed myself in just being present in
Okay.
art school. So what was happening at school was happening at school. And I really detached. I'm not saying that was healthy. I don't recommend it, but the pain of missing my family was like blindsiding,
Yeah.
resulting in me not really calling as much or talking to them as much. Meanwhile, I have a random roommate from Connecticut who talked to her mom every single day on the phone.
Oh,
And I'd
wow.
just be like doing my homework and she's calling her mom. And I'm like, you call your mom every day? She's like, why wouldn't I talk to my mom? She thought I was weird and I thought she was weird for wanting to talk to her mom every single day. She's like, how do you not talk to your family every day?
Yeah.
I don't know, because I have things to do and I don't want to get upset.
Yeah, exactly. Did you have to work at all while you're going to college to help
I
pay for
actually had
the?
I had the privilege of not working.
Oh,
And I know that's really rare. I was aware of that privilege the whole time I was in school, but my parents also reminded me they know how involved I get when I'm learning. They knew that I felt like I was really at the bottom of the curve, like I had to learn so much
okay.
that I was really it took me art was not this is easy
Yeah.
for me. Art was I'm spending 2 times, sometimes 3 times the amount of time learning how to do something that these kids have been like who actually went to like high school art programs, which I didn't even know that was a thing.
Yeah.
There were kids who like did live figure drawing classes in the summers and on the weekends, and I also didn't know that was a thing. So I'm taking figure drawing one, and I've never done this before, and half the class is oh this is like knocking out figure drawings in
Yeah.
half an hour, and I'm sitting there 4 hours trying to figure this out, and it
Right.
looks terrible. The proportions are wrong, the energy is all off. So it's a huge learning curve for me. So I'm grateful that I took out a loan. I paid for school myself. I'm going to be paying for it till the day I die, I think. But like school, I treated like my full like school is your job.
Yeah.
You're not getting paid for it, but it will pay in other ways.
That's interesting too, because I'm going back to the soccer coach telling you, even at D2 level, you're not good enough to do this. And you're not going to be able to do soccer and be an art student, which when I heard you say that, I was like, oh my gosh, another person who's in the way of potential. Because the amount of people who play college ball that do not go on to play professional ball is huge. The percentage that get through to the pros that have played pro ball for 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, depending on their eligibility. It's few and far between. And when you have a coach at that level that's saying, look, you got to choose one or the other at this point, determining what you're going to do after the fact, because you could have easily said, all right, I'm going to choose soccer, played for 4 years, and ended up with a English degree and been like, all right, now what do I do from here?
Exactly. And that's a lot of people's stories too.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to go play pro soccer as a female. And number one, just because the sport's not big enough
At that point, yeah, it
at
wasn't.
that point. So, yeah, that's always it takes me back to my basic drawing teacher said, you're only going to be a B student.
Yeah.
That, but literally, that has driven me to try to get into whatever I felt like I wanted to attempt, whether it was fashion, whether it was jewelry design, whether it was working with musicians or production of a concert or event. Any that I did all of those things just from the sheer will of I think I can do this and I think I can do it well, so I'm going to do it. Yeah, that that always bothers me. But where I'm going with this is the fact that you're working at it, even though it's taking you 4 hours to try and figure out this figure drawing versus these other students around you are like half hour, got it sketched, looks proportionately correct, looks exactly what you're looking at in the center of the room going on. And you've I've seen that just throughout your story here, is you've been willing to put in the time and the effort to accomplish what you're doing. So I commend you for that as a creative, as an individual who's willing to go after the thing that you want to do. And I want that to be highlighted for the audience as well, is that if you have the desire to do it, you pretty much have the ability to do it. It's just a matter of taking that step.
Thank you. And I think from a mental health perspective,
Yeah.
your time and your effort that you put into other people, insurmountable, cannot replace. I'd rather have somebody sit with me and give me their time and give me their compassion than
Yeah.
throw money at me. In the middle, I would say maybe giving me resources would be a nice middle ground. But yeah, in terms of the scale, someone sits with you and gives you like what we're doing right now, like just the time of sharing stories,
Yep.
and showing effort and reflection with not one another. I see that help people's mental health and longevity and healing more than I won $50,000 doing this thing, or I got this grant, or I got whatever.
Yeah.
And I think it just speaks to I'd rather be doing something that speaks to my soul, speaks to me either spiritually or something higher than myself than something practical or something that on paper would be more beneficial for me. And yes, I loved soccer my entire life, but there was something about creating that was so much deeper and meaningful for me, let alone sustainable. If I
Yeah.
have the privilege of growing old and my body no longer works, I'm not going to be playing soccer till I'm 90 if I get to that point. But I can create until I'm 90. I can engage in time with somebody and stories with somebody.
For sure.
I think that's an important thing that I was coming to realize with the art, that this thing you've been doing secretly, not secretly, but just like quietly by yourself, there's a reason for that.
Yeah.
The possibility of being able to create and make meaning and express yourself in some way, that's combating a lot of the loss, the grief, the attacks on ability or
Yeah.
self-esteem or identity, however we want to word that. I can take the hits if
Yeah.
I'm filling the battery meter back up. And the way I was learning how to do that is to reflect on it and create, whether it's I'm reading a story about someone who's triumphing over good and evil, and or I'm creating something that's just like an authentic I'm angry about this, I'm sad about this, and sometimes you don't even know that's what you're feeling at the time. It's just I
Yeah.
feel compelled to make this thing.
Yeah.
And so many of us, when we honor that, either that compulsion or that urge, that instinct, I feel like I have to do whatever the thing is. When we let ourselves do that, we like blow our own minds in terms of what we're capable of doing. And I haven't really met a creative who's felt, when I say successful, connected to their work and like their work means something, not necessarily like being famous or making money.
Yeah,
Any creative who feels really connected and called and dedicated to their craft, it's because it's so meaningful for them
for sure.
that it transcends any societal pressure.
Yeah.
Do something else with it. Like
Yeah,
they would do it for free.
exactly. Exactly. Those are, in my opinion, too, those are the true diehard creatives. Those are the ones, like you say, they're not doing it for the fame, the glory, the money. They're doing it because it's who they are. It's their need to express, their need to evoke emotion through that form, whichever it is. When you get to the end of college, you're graduating. What is the thought process of, all right, what am I going to do now? Because I'm about to end this 4 year trial.
And I hadn't had a job lined up yet. I was applying, I was trying, but hadn't had anything yet. I ended up, and I'm very grateful for this as well. I ended up getting a job in the Latham area, so still in that Albany. I don't know. I guess it's still considered the tri-state area. I've learned you can't say upstate. My friends who are like in Syracuse and they're like, that's not upstate. You're in Albany.
Yeah.
I ended up getting a job as a graphic designer for an architecture firm, a family-owned, private,
Nice.
very beautiful architecture firm based out of Latham, Trudeau Architects. And the boss was lovely, Bart, in terms of he always wanted to hire new graduates because he loved seeing new creativity. He liked having new blood
Yeah.
on the team. I'm sure financially also it's nice because you have a young person, you don't have to pay them as much. But the man just had a brilliant talk about creative minds. He's the one who is artistic and creative, but also left-brained in terms of knows how to do the spreadsheets and the financial and the numbers planning and statistics. He
Yeah.
just has both, which I not surprising. I feel like a lot of architects could maybe say they have the mathematical part and the creative part.
Yeah.
I hate math. No math for me.
Same here.
But just having the chance to work with architects too, just loved that. Meeting architects, getting to see what they did. And ironically, they worked primarily with SUNY schools. They had a contract to work with all the SUNY schools in New York State,
Yeah.
State University of New York. And they worked with all of the Office of Mental Health facilities in New York State. So all the psychiatric hospitals.
Oh, wow.
So it's like when I look back, high school, I was also taking like basic psych courses, AP psych. It took me a while to connect all the dots of mental health has been a theme for you. Like so a
Okay.
lot of books I was reading had mental health components to it, and I wasn't putting that together.
Yeah.
Here I am working for an architecture firm that only specializes in working with psychiatric institutions and college campuses, and like the security and the layouts and the safety concerns with that. So like getting to tour some of those facilities when I'm helping design for them
Yeah.
was pretty big. And ironically, one of the architects that works there has been my best friend for 15 years now. I
Cool.
wouldn't have met her if I didn't do that either. And we forget that too when we create and follow our path. Like, how come, even if we don't stick with a job, who do you meet that becomes the permanent takeaway from that experience? I only worked there for about a year. And then I ended up moving back to Long Island, even though I didn't want to. I was a person who I'm never going back to the island again. I got out of my hometown. I'm never going back.
Yeah.
But almost a cliche story. Got broken up with, was absolutely devastated. Didn't even want to be in the same town as him anymore. Just didn't know how to operate and that needed some distance, needed some space. There wasn't really a lot of job mobility, even though I loved the architecture firm. It's a small little practice. It wasn't like I was going to move up the ladder or do anything else
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
So ended up moving back to the island and got a job at this place called Curran and Connors, which is still a design agency. Again, met some friends that will be lifelong friends there for corporate reporting, which I know sounds very boring. But what I loved about it was I had 10 different clients at once. So again, constantly learning, constantly being stimulated. And because I'm designing their reports for them, I'm like learning about their industries so that I can have informed design. Still don't know how people design and they don't know anything about what they're designing for. Like when I worked for the designing book covers, people who said they didn't even read the book, but they would design the cover. I'm like, how are you even doing that? It just didn't feel like it had integrity to me. I'm like learning about like Allison transmissions. I'm like learning about cars, and then I'm learning about I did design work for Lockheed Martin, so I'm learning all about security and I'm reading
Yeah.
about war efforts and I'm just taking in so much varied information and it was really stimulating for me and getting to design like whole layouts for books. It was really just again rapid fire learning really quickly. I don't know anything about corporate reporting, but I'm going to learn. And eventually, once I start getting comfortable with it, then it's time to move on.
Okay.
Kind of thing. Jumped ahead, designed for Addison in New York City for a little bit. And that's when I was doing that kind of my whole, oh, I feel like my soul has left. Like I'm not creating for genuine purposes anymore. I'm designing for corporations who make billions of dollars, and I'm designing for people who are sending off missiles to God knows what country, and I'm
Yeah.
designing for capitalistic corporations in America who are just
Dollar,
saying they're
dollar sign.
sustainable, but they're not
Yeah.
with their BS initiatives and whatnot. And then you read it because you're actually designing, you're like, this is so disingenuous. And I just didn't want to be a part of it anymore. So I'm commuting back and forth to the city. Gives you a long time to think about your life. And I was like, there has to be other purposes to this. This kind of goes back to what you were saying in the beginning. I just was like, I have a design degree, but I'm worried that I'm just stuck in this. I have no purpose. I'm not designing for the good guy anymore.
Yeah.
And I think within a month of this realization, I decided I have to change careers here. I was talking to my sister about something, one thing led to another, and I found out art therapy is a thing. Like
Okay.
I realized that not only just being a therapist, but a creative arts therapist is an actual full-fledged career and has been since like the 70s,
Yeah.
technically. Looked into it, applied to some schools, and tried to come up with a plan to save up for it because I didn't have any psychology background. So you can't just jump right into a
Right.
clinical therapy degree if you don't have any of that. Made the decision, applied for a year in advance, got into LIU Post's program for clinical art therapy and counseling. And then in the year leading up to that, I got a full-time design job on the island, knowing that, okay, you're going to be bored, but it pays well. This money's going to pay for the community college to get your psych degree, and then you can move on to go get a graduate degree at Post. So that's what I did. Quit the city job, became, became more local on the island, and knocked out all the psych degrees at the community college to save money, and then switched it up.
Gotcha.
Just quit the job and was like, okay. And then same thing, treated grad school like a job and then just did graphic design work freelance on the side to help pay for bills and adult responsibilities.
Exactly. The thing that artists don't want to have to deal with, but it's real.
It is very real, especially when you're an undergrad and you're 18 and you have the privilege of you have a loan and this is the money that's in your account and just don't touch it unless it's an emergency
Right.
versus okay, now I'm 28. So 10 years had gone between that and me looking into art school.
Yeah.
So I went back to school at 28. Very different life situation for sure. You have rent and bills to pay and
Absolutely.
car.
Was there, I've been wanting to ask this, but I feel like this is probably the easiest time to do. Was there anything traumatic that took place within your own personal life that nudged you even more so to thinking, I can do this art therapy thing and potentially help somebody else?
Several things. Again, I think I didn't connect the dots until I was in my training.
Sure.
And you go through, you probably understand the lingo, but for other people who might not, this transference, countertransference phenomenon of you're the clinician or the therapist, but you're having a very visceral reaction to some of the people you're treating, and you can't quite figure out why.
Yeah.
Let me tell you, that training will light you up in terms of look at your own stuff, even if you think you're healed from it. So Yeah, and I could rapid fire list a bunch of things, but I think the most pressing thing, which I did talk to her about, and she was open to me mentioning it, was my sister was going through eating disorder treatment at the
Okay.
time.
All right.
And she had shared with me how groundbreaking and all the intensive therapy she had been doing really opened up a lot of things for her. And not that I wanted to make it about me, but that was, again, going back to that older sibling thing of always feeling like I'm the one who's supposed to be protecting
Yeah.
them and looking out for them and being that leader.
Yeah.
Uh, Humbling myself, but also coming to terms of reduce your ego. The idea of your siblings are their own humans, they have their own things that they're battling. But something about that was like, I have also failed. Like, how could I not know
Yeah.
that she was going through something like that?
Sure.
So that's one thing that I'm relatively comfortable bringing up, especially with her blessing. But it surprised me how it opened up all my own things, like this idea of, and grief too. I've been mentioning like the losses that I've had in terms of I had lost a couple of friends at this point. We've lost a couple of family members to drug overdose at this point,
Okay.
coming to terms with that kind of consumption
Yeah.
behavior, whether it's eating disorder, whether it's drugs, whether it's drinking,
Yeah.
and seeing how that plays a role in what I feel is my responsibility and like releasing that.
Sure.
Because so often I think people in healing professions will become a healer, but they're not healing themselves.
Correct.
And it's very important to let yourself come to terms with that. It makes you a better clinician
Yeah.
that way. But yeah, I think we could spend 3 hours just talking about how training for a graduate program to be a therapist will bring out a lot of your stuff. People hear trauma and they think like capital T, like abuse, PTSD. But with trauma too, I think grief and loss is capital T for sure. Like some losses we experience are very difficult. My big thing was when I was in grad school, it was more of a physical trauma that I didn't realize was affecting me so much emotionally and mentally. So, my first semester of grad school, I was still playing in a recreational soccer league because how can I not function
Yeah.
with playing soccer? And my first semester of school, I ended up tearing my ACL, LCL, and meniscus. It's called the unhappy triad tear while playing one weekend, and I ended up needing surgery. And on paper, I always was like downplaying it because it's not life threatening. It's not like I needed open heart
Yeah.
surgery. It's like I have cancer. It's not like those big emergent things.
Yeah.
But I think anyone who's lived their life as an athlete and now can't have the physical capability that they had beforehand, let alone the fact that surgery is a trauma. It's a physical trauma. You are being unconscious, someone's opening you up
Yeah.
and doing stuff in your body while you are asleep.
Yeah.
And then you're waking up and now you have to deal with this whole physical recovery process. It's a traumatic experience. But for me, even with the physical, I really struggled getting back physically, partly because I didn't want to stop going to grad school. I didn't want to furlough my semester to heal. So I was trying to do physical rehabilitation while going to school and didn't heal properly at all. And it became, in terms of like depression level was very high, not so much anxiety. It was just like in this dark place that I didn't really know I could go to,
Yeah.
and also kept constantly either belittling myself or shaming myself for it in
Okay.
regards to, you had an ACL surgery. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah.
You're not dying. But yes, I can't walk on my own. I had 4 fractures in the kneecap as well.
Wow. Okay.
So I was in yeah, she just hit at an angle that it just was one of
Just
those
tried
things
it.
where the angle
Yeah.
she hit did the right amount of damage.
Yeah.
So I had to be in a metal brace for the first 4 weeks of my recovery. So I couldn't bend it, even though with ACL recovery, you're supposed to bend your knee within like the first day and you're supposed to walk. And I wasn't able to do all those things. And it really messed up the recovery process by a really long shot. And meanwhile, I'm in these mental health, like intensive courses where I'm also lining up. I had an internship lined up at a psychiatric hospital to work at. So it was like the weight of rushing. You
Yeah.
have to do
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
quickly. You have to get better quickly. You have to learn quickly. And I think for the first time in my life, my body was like, no, we are the ones that are going to determine the pace
Yeah.
at which you do things now, not your mind. And it was not a good experience for me to be going through that while I'm in grad school. was pretty ironic.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Again, I can resonate with this very viscerally. When I was 14, I grew 7 inches in one summer.
So shin splints were the least of your problems probably at this time.
It wasn't even shin splints. I developed Osgood-Schlatter's disease. And so I had to have knee surgery on my left knee where they went in and they ground off the bone
Okay.
to make sure that creator wasn't going to develop any further. And I could I can feel the pain now that I felt then waking up from surgery because I woke up screaming my head up. I thought they had taken my leg off, didn't put it back on.
Yep.
And so I remember that immensely. Fast forward to 2001, I'm playing rec soccer, decide to go and play a pickup game indoor, and I'm on a fast break, taking a the ball off the side of the wall, and this defensive player is coming at me hard. I'm not seeing a real way to alleviate getting hit by him. So I attempt to bounce the ball around him off the wall. And as I'm going to bounce it, he collides with me at the side of my knee. ACL, meniscus. The pop was like a
Yep.
gunshot
Yes,
in the
can
arena.
hear it. And know before you even hit the floor.
Yeah. And I
Hmm.
can see you're feeling it as I'm describing it.
I'll never forget it.
Yeah. And my memory, people have their memories of what 9/11 was,
Oh yeah, I do too on that one.
right?
Growing up on Long Island, 9/11, that was
Yeah. My memory of 9/11 is I'm hobbling out of physical therapy, walking down this ramp, coming out of the hospital, and in the waiting area of the entry of the hospital, it's on the TV screen. And we're like, what the heck? A plane crashed into the building? That doesn't even make any sense. How in the world did that happen? Get home. Of course, you see all the news, and we know what that was after that. But it took me, I don't know, 6, 7 months to get fully rehabbed from that and didn't start playing soccer again until probably 2012-ish, 2013-ish. Then played up until 2017 and was playing again indoor rec stuff. And 2017, you're playing with people who have been in pro leagues, been in touring leagues, all that kind of stuff. And you start dealing with the elements of now it's an international cultural environment, and they don't realize we're not playing for the World Cup at this point in time. And it just got to the point where I was like, I don't want the drama. I
mm,
can't listen to this drama that's going on. It's just too much for me. So I stopped in 2017, haven't played soccer since. But the elements of being down as an athlete and that playing into your mental state, taking you to a place far beyond the fact that, look, this is just an injury. You can overcome this. It's just going to take time. But you're slipping into this darker side of that and really being hard on yourself.
yeah. And for a while. It wasn't for a little bit. And because of the nature of this podcast too, it's for the first time I really empathized and understood suicidality. Like I understood it.
Yes.
The idea of also not wanting to be a burden. My boyfriend at the time, I was like, he's like helping take care of me. I don't want to be someone who's this young having someone take care of me because I
Yeah.
can't drive, I can't go anywhere. His parents, who we're now married, but his parents would be driving me to my grad program because I couldn't drive. It
Yeah.
was my right leg. Just that burdenness too of, oh, I just don't want people to be having to do this for
Yeah.
me. But also just laying at night in so much pain Just what can I do to just not, I can't move. You literally can't physically escape yourself. The outlet of those marathon runners, they're running from something.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I don't have that option now. So what you were getting at before with how did you balance like undergrad if you didn't have that came for me, but later because of an injury. And it took me a long time to get out of it. And I don't think I'm fully out of it. And that's the thing. I think it's just it becomes something you get better at putting up the curtain with.
Sure.
Like once you know it's there, it doesn't go away. It's just okay, I have to get better at addressing this for
Yeah.
myself
Yeah.
in the moment and using my support systems because I ended up tearing it again at a wedding, dancing at a wedding, my friend's wedding. And the wedding was a week before my wedding.
Oh,
It was
wow.
there was like all of this shame, self-blame
Yeah.
to yourself. You've ruined your wedding.
Yeah.
Beyonce is going to be pissed at you.
Yeah.
How am I going to get through this? Because the feeling, like you were describing the pop and the
Oh,
feeling, I'm like,
yeah.
I know what it is. I don't have to go get an MRI to tell you what's going on here.
Yeah.
But yeah, the idea of, I think this is important with mental health too. Having the same injury again, different scenario, but same experience, and that flush of dread or assuming you already know how this is going to go.
Yeah.
The thoughts of, I can't do this
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
which I definitely feel with loss and grief too. It's like when you lose another person, it's how do I do this again?
Yeah.
Or like with my clients who are bipolar or through something that's more cyclic, it's like, how do I do this again? And with this ACL recovery, ironically enough, it's okay. Now, at least this isn't the shock value. You've
Yeah.
done this once before.
Yeah.
So lean into the knowledge. Again, it goes back to the knowledge. Like, what have you already learned?
Yeah.
And how can you use that to put yourself in a better headspace? And connecting all these dots right now, I think what I'm coming to terms with is the voice of the other people, the coaches we had, the teachers we had who were like, no, this isn't it for you.
Yeah.
They might do that. That's on them. Don't do that to yourself. I was doing that to myself at this point. I had decided I'm not going to be able to do this again. I'm not going to heal. I'm not going to be able to get back to where I was. And learning how to shut that voice off.
Right.
Or, okay, if I don't want to invalidate you, I'm going to sound like a therapist. Okay, you're going to have
Mhm.
the voice, but
Keep it
it's not going
quiet.
to be the loudest voice.
Yeah. Keep it quiet.
Yes, I tell my clients and my patients, like, it might be in the car with you, and it's okay to invite it along. It's okay to be friends with it and treat it well and treat it with kindness, but it's not driving. That's
Right.
not going to be the one that's deciding where we go, and it's not going to be in control of the vehicle.
Yeah.
But it's also important to like remember that feeling of if you go to a party and there's people in the room who you feel like don't belong there, or you make them feel like they don't belong. That's what starts a cycle too. Is I felt rejected, I felt like I didn't belong, and then before we know it, we have this disgruntled person who's wreaking some type of havoc or just uncomfortable
Yeah.
feeling
Yeah.
at the party. Whereas if we just made everyone feel at least respected, the party might go a lot smoother. So the idea of same thing with your emotions and your thoughts of okay, doesn't mean that these are facts, but they can be here and we can sit with them and acknowledge that they're there, but also you're not the one who's going to be winning here. You're not going to be the one that's making all of these decisions.
Yeah, exactly. And two, with that experience, like it's the stacking of that pain level again, right, on top of the other. Now it's all right, I'm experiencing it again. It was traumatic when it happened. Now it's happened again. Stacked trauma and the emotion of having to feel that over again. And then now you're starting to realize, okay, it's not the same. I've got some information from the previous one that I can apply here. I can potentially get through this quicker because I know the map of how to navigate it. But when those types of things start stacking up over and over and over, a person can get to a place where they literally can't breathe
Yeah. Hmm.
because the trauma that is stacked is just so immense. They don't have options to get out of it. And I know that art in multiple forms can be an assist for that. If we're going to use athletic terms, it can be an assist to help get you through some of that release and some of that shift of chipping away some of that traumatic stack that's been built up. The other aspect too that I'm seeing here as you being the first child, there's a little bit of that element of I'm the first child, so I've got some responsibility of the others. I need to watch over them. The first child's usually the most independent. Second child is usually the free spirit, go their own way, do their own thing. Third child has a little bit more emotions. Fourth child, it's just a crapshoot. They could end up being whatever. But being that first child, you have that, it's almost like an internal thing where you're harder on yourself in certain aspects because you have a sense of responsibility that isn't always your responsibility. And that can play into it as well. So sometimes that can come up in therapeutic situations where if you can get a person to realize that, hey, some of this is just ingrained, it's just birth order type scenario. Like it's not all you, it's just a luck of the draw kind of a thing. That sometimes that helps them to see, okay, now I understand why I have this internal wanting to do these things that may seem out of the ordinary for other people, but it's just internal thing that's driving me, want me to do this. Going through that, feeling like you don't want to be taken care of, you're letting somebody else down because not only did this happen to you again, you're about to get married. So it's throwing a wrench in the program of what an idyllic, creative mind would want as a female for a wedding. How is your support system helping you to navigate that mindset at that point in terms of those types of circumstances of what you want, what you're envisioning versus what's going to be the reality of what you go through and deal with in the coming week?
I think I can say I was at a point where I had more support at that point than I would have, say, when I was doing the design
Sure.
thing. My husband is a rock for me. That's why he got the status of husband. He got to move from boyfriend to fiance to husband. And he was with me through that whole experience. But I think it's the importance of when you connect with people looking at, especially when it's your partner,
Yeah.
it's not to where can you fix my deficits, but where do you compliment me and
Yes.
show me grace where I'm not showing myself grace.
Yeah.
And Kevin has always been someone who approaches life with humor.
Okay.
I struggle with that. I am more, not to say that these two things are opposites, but I would say I'm more of an intense, passionate,
Yeah.
conceptual, get into it. I'll sit and talk about emotions and heavy stuff and complex stuff all day long.
Yeah.
Not to say that I don't have a sense of humor. I will watch The Office every day of the week, but he's more genuine in terms of just always trying to lighten the
Yeah.
mood. He'll crack a joke even if it's at his own expense.
Yeah.
When I doubt myself, when I am very anxious, when the moods were very low, because he had front row seats to that, can't hide.
Yeah.
He never stopped to remind me of my capabilities. And he also was able to do it in a way that wasn't, this term is more popular now, like toxic positivity. He wasn't someone who was constantly peppy cheerleader. You can do it. It's okay. He wasn't invalidating where I was at, but just let me go through those feelings.
Yeah.
Just would sit and listen and then try to make me smile about it. He approaches life in that positive, hardworking, simple, keep it simple
Yeah.
mindset. And I really needed that through that whole experience. So even if he was disappointed or angry with me, he never let on about it. And still went to the wedding, wrapped up my knee really well, and we had a beautiful day. And it was almost like, not that I physically knew that I was feeling it, but it didn't get in the way of the day that he deserved and we deserved.
Yeah.
He's a big component of it. I also, through my program, like since I had graduated, had worked in several psychiatric hospitals since then. That tended to be my specialty. All of my work as a therapist has been in inpatient psych or behavioral health
Okay.
and substance use background.
Okay.
And through that working, I had found other friends who, when you make friends that are also mental health professionals, it's like you get that extra layer of compassion and
Sure.
understanding, and they're really good listeners and they let you feel your things, but still don't let you give into it.
Yeah.
So I had this small, tight group of friends who really could show up for me and just be there. Even when I was isolating, even when I was don't talk to me, even when I was not responding,
Yeah.
I had a few people who wouldn't take that for an answer. And friends shouldn't have to do that, but the fact that they did made all the difference. Again, I go back to time and effort. People going out of the way to do that for me made all the difference.
Yeah. It's a huge blessing to have those in your life. The friends that are willing to step in and say, hey, no, you need to come out with us versus sitting home watching TV or doing whatever. That can be huge for someone to get through the mind struggle that
And
they're going.
because I had the art background, I just lean into I'm always making something. But during that time I'm stuck, so I might as well create some artwork while I'm at it. So I was just doing sketches or daily projects, just something to even look forward to doing,
Yeah.
or an outlet to get it out, a place where I can just put it out on this piece of paper and let it be what it is, and not have to analyze it, not have to, it's not for anything other than release at
Yeah.
that.
Can
So
you,
creating was always a huge healing process for me.
yeah, can you go into that a little bit deeper? Because I think it's a key element here, as well as key in what you do regularly with therapy. But for you personally, what types of things were you creating and what were you potentially getting out?
The first major project I think that was helpful for my mental health was when I was a graphic designer and I was feeling that dread, that weight of I feel like I'm not expressing myself creatively and I'm just using it to help corporations.
Yeah.
So I leaned into it's a big thing. It's called the 100-day project. I had seen an advertisement for it. I'm like, what if I did that on my own terms? The idea of coming up with a project that's personalized to me and it's something I do every single day for 100 days. It doesn't have to be a lot of time, but you have to do it every day. It's like that dedication, that consistency. And I think that's one of the biggest things with progress is consistency,
Yeah.
creating routine and stability for ourselves, giving us back some sense of control. So I started with, I wanted to, what are my goals? I think I need to get out in nature more because I know that's something that helps me spiritually and regulate myself, but I haven't been doing that. So some of healing is coming to terms with looking in the mirror and what am I not doing that I know works for me, and
Yeah.
just humbling yourself and taking ownership of you're not doing the things to help yourself. So I want to get out in nature and I want to get back into like physically creating something, but still speak to design. So I started with the alphabet. Just okay, every day we're going to pick a typeface, like a font. We're going to do the letter of the alphabet that it is, and we're going to relate it to either a book. I think I did a book. Or if it was the number of the day, and like you're carving out the number from a piece of paper, you have to go outside and you have to photograph the number in the landscape. And that was it. Simple idea, but it's I have to get outside, I have to do the number, and I have to photograph it in some way. And then after 3 months, essentially, you have a portfolio of 100 photograph pieces, but you also have the cutouts. And it's just like the idea of a ritual or a task that's grounding you every day. If I don't do anything, if it's a depressive day and I can't even get out of my bed,
Yeah.
okay, then I'm taking a photo from my bed then. It's the commitment to doing the thing and being honest and reflecting at where you're at. And
Yeah.
that's what it is that day. And it just snowballed from there. I tend to do a 100-day project every year or so, or I started consolidating them into 30-day, like monthly projects,
Yeah.
a sprint than a marathon.
Yeah.
And then bringing in the physical, this might seem a little random, but in terms of my professional career and healing, I was looking into ways to regulate my body more physically because with multiple knee surgeries, my legs always felt imbalanced.
Yeah.
I literally couldn't get balanced, but also when I'm stepping, it looks imbalanced, feels unstable.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting certified I went to get training in, it's called guided drawing, her Cornelia Elbright's practice of guided drawing, but it's based in bilateral processing, meaning you're drawing with both hands at the same time in either a mirrored or unmirrored format, which will let us know how regulated or dysregulated you are.
Yeah.
It's specifically for trauma processing
Yeah.
from an art clinical perspective. And in doing these exercises for myself, it was really eye-opening in terms of I was being my own art therapist, but what the process like physically and emotionally was bringing up for me and having like actual release, whether it was like tears or it was making me angry or I was shaking. And it became this re-meeting of self of I'm an athlete
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
but in a different capacity, in a creating capacity. So it's this spiritual of like I'm creating from within, but I'm also releasing
Yeah.
and making use of my pain into something that is now this honest emission of where I'm at, like mentally and
Right.
emotionally. And once I got certified in that, I started bringing that to my clients as well, because so many of my clients are coming to me with these unrecognized losses or minimized losses. Like you
Yeah.
went through a trauma or you went through a loss, but you're doing the same thing I was doing, which is you are telling yourself because it could have been so much worse that it's not something that needs care and attention. Whereas if we just sit and give it some compassion, care, and attention, you can fully process it, see how it's impacted you, or how maybe your baggage or things from life that didn't even happen to you, like being born first, might be impacting how you're receiving
Yeah.
this loss or
Yeah.
this thing that happened to you.
Yeah.
And what of that can we release? Like you can put down that weight, you don't have to be carrying that anymore versus how do we make you stronger because you can't change the load, but you can carry it because you're carrying it differently.
Yeah.
And that's been really, I'm trying to think. I don't know if there's a powerful word enough in my vocabulary to express being witness to clients and patients doing that type of work. Like having them draw with two hands and having this, it brings up feelings of, oh, I have a really crippling fear of death or
Yeah.
I have a really underlying solid foundation of just root anxiety because of an attachment
Yeah.
to something I had.
Yeah.
So, where the art therapy really clicks for me is you don't have to be an artist to do art therapy at all. And I think that's the biggest misconception about it is people who are doing art therapy are doing it because they're already artists who are struggling with mental health and want to combat it. You can do that absolutely, but
Sure.
also some of my biggest witness to healing have been for people that haven't picked up a crayon since they were 3,
Yeah.
because I do believe that creating is an instinct that we're all born with. And through society, pressures with family, get a job, make money, we're not supported in the idea of expression. It's viewed as a privilege and or frivolous, and when in reality, it's such a deep part of our psyche and our soul to watch people realize that wasn't completely destroyed and lost, that was still in there. That's been the most rewarding part of my job is through loss, through grief, through trauma, through mood regulation, whatever my clients are struggling with, offering them creative interventions that aim to support the root cause of that
Yeah.
and to have them have that moment of either peace or relief or new perspective on them so that suicidality or that crushing weight has now shifted just enough to make space for the hope and light part of it.
Yes.
That's all we needed. We
Yep.
don't need to do this big thing at first. Even though this feels big, we just need a little.
Yep.
We just need a little shift. Everything else will come. And I think creating gives that to people in a way that talk therapy doesn't. all the time.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Absolutely. Talk therapy, and again, I'm speaking from my personal experience because I've been in talk therapy since 1994, and I've been fortunate to have a psychiatrist for most of that time that was willing to allow me to explore other avenues of healing versus, no, here's your medicine. This is what you do. Come back next week. We're going to just do it again. She was always willing to look outside of the box and say, why don't you try this? Why don't you go see this person? See how it works. See if you like them. See if you like the process. And even when it got to a point where I started exploring the spirituality aspect of it, even most of my lifetime, I was ingrained in the religious aspect of things. That wasn't the same as what I started to experience when I stepped into the spirituality of the human being. She would say, I don't understand what that is. I'm not familiar with it, but if you think it's something you want to look at, go ahead. And then come back and tell me about it. And then maybe I can learn from it. And maybe it can be something that I can share with somebody else. And I've always been grateful for that. Always been grateful for that. Later on, 2007, I started working with a cognitive therapist. She was the exact same way. She would allow me to explore other things outside of traditional stuff that she was trained in. And the key thing for me was when I started working her was I'd been in a relationship that it was just not going to work. And I had literally lost who I was as a creative. And I've been in creative my entire life. So for me to lose that, I had no idea what to do next. And one of the things that she allowed for me to do, where you're saying the same thing with allowing just that little crack of space to open up. Sometimes my anxiety would be so high that by the time I got to her office and sat down, I'd be like, I can't do this today. I can't do this. And she'd be like, okay, no problem. You got here. That's enough. Go ahead, go back home, relax, and I'll see you next week. And her just allowing me that little bit of space to know I accomplished something, even though I was in this huge amount of anxiety and I could not open my mouth to speak about it. She allowed me enough space to be able to go back home, reduce some of that anxiety, and then attempt to come back the next week. And we did that for 3 months because it literally took me that long to just to get comfortable,
Mm.
to sit and start opening up about why I felt like I'm lost myself in this 2 years span of relationship. And when I see that in a therapist or someone who's working in therapeutic field, working with mental health and with patients who are dealing with mental health issues, for me, that's gold. And again, I want to highlight that for the audience and for you because that compassion, that empathy of knowing we just need a little bit of space here. That's all we need. It's just this little bit of space to let in some light, to let in some clarity, to let in a moment of realization that you attempted something to change the direction of what your mind's doing for you. That is gold. It's hugely valuable. And I hope that if any other therapists are out there that get to listen to this episode, that they can realize if you can incorporate a little bit more of that into your practice, you might see some things take place that go a little bit faster for a client or someone in need. I just wanted to highlight that for you and the audience as well. With getting into completing that coursework and deciding, okay, now I'm going to start doing this as therapy, how did it come about you getting connected with Start Creative Arts as the unit of
Yes,
structure for you?
great question. And I feel like this is the beautiful part to wrap us up, right?
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
full circle now. So
yeah,
I was connected to you through Dina Palma, who is our fearless, ferocious leader
yeah.
at Start Creative Arts Therapy. So we are a private practice based out of West Islip. Dina, who had a dream of having her own private practice for years. I don't know how much you've gotten to speak with her, but
Not much.
she always had a dream of opening up her own private practice. And she ironically, I'll let her tell her own story, but she opened up Start on her birthday, which was 10 days before the pandemic hit.
Oh,
So she had just filed to open up a private practice, and then the world literally shut down.
yeah.
But in the meantime, so March of 2020, I'm finishing up grad school at this time. I'm 30 years old. I'm celebrating my 30th birthday. My birthday is the day after Dina's, actually. So I'm in Colorado with my family, so celebrating my 30th birthday. We're trying to fly home during COVID, and Dina had contacted me because she was my internship supervisor.
Oh, wow.
So coming off of my knee surgery, I had gotten an internship at a psychiatric hospital here on Long Island. She ended up being my supervisor. And she ended up being a professor of mine for this week intensive course that I was taking over the summer at the college. So she was my supervisor and my professor at the same time.
Okay.
So I was getting to know her on two different levels and went on her merry way. About a year later is when COVID's happening. She contacts me saying she opened up her own private practice. She knows I have a background in graphic design. She remembers me as a student, remembers seeing my body of work, wanted to know about my capabilities of and my interest in helping her basically design the brand for her studio, for her therapy studio.
Okay.
And I was more than happy to do it. She's a force. Dina is a force. I think she's a mentor to a lot of people. She's somebody that a lot of people look up to because she's a doer. I don't know where she would fall on the Enneagram scale. Maybe she knows. I should ask her. But she's a get it done advocate all over the place doing 20 things type of person.
Yeah.
She's a human person, like a social, I want to connect to you, I want to build community. She's all about that. I lack there for sure. I'm the one, we're the fives, right? We're the one that wants to recharge after talking to a group of people.
Yeah.
She's the one that always wants to be in a group of people. She brought me into the mix. I met with her. I ended up designing the Start Therapy logo, the website. I designed her website for her and everything that comes with the brand. So like color palette, typography, like getting back into all that design nerd stuff that
Yeah.
designers out there would probably love to talk about with me. But yeah, just setting her up for the visuals. And then she was like, "You're also graduating, right? You have your permit. When you graduate for an art therapy degree, you have to get 1,500 hours of supervised clinical work
Yeah.
to get your license. And you have to pass your board exams.
Yeah.
So that was another offering. She's like, why don't you also try your hand at being a therapist at the private practice? Take on some clients, work with them one on one. It would be through virtual means, obviously, because of COVID, but get your feet wet with that. Because up until that point, both my internships and the job I had landed post grad were all ironically psychiatric hospital based. I don't know why. I just always gravitated towards, I like that setting.
Yeah.
But private practice is a different animal. It's you get to work with clients one on one. You get to work with them long term. Like psychiatric, they've just had their crisis.
Yes.
They're at their lowest point, arguably, or their repetitive lowest point.
Yep.
We're trying to get medication balances in play. We're trying to just get them to wake up and get back into we call them ADLs, activities of daily living.
Yeah.
Are you sleeping? Are you able to sleep? Are you able to hydrate? Are you able to eat? And yeah, it was a big shift, but I'm like, you know what? Fine. I'm terrified, but let's do it. But it ended up being like from the get-go, a very beautiful experience. Learning to work with people who are out in the world, navigating life and just trying to make sense of it.
Yeah.
And you get to see them on a weekly basis. and you get to watch them transform from week to week.
Yeah.
Definitely a different, still rewarding, but different experience. So I've been with Dina and Start since the get-go, since March of 2020. But we also have the art component that we bring into it. Start creates,
Yeah.
which it's not clinical and therapy based. It's not through health insurance, but it's our whole community of like creative practices. So it's our foot in the door of one of my passions, which is helping human beings realize that they're all creative people and you all have creative, anyone listening, you have creative abilities within you. And it doesn't have to be a paintbrush or a drawing. It can be, there's so many different ways to create. We want to see them all. We do a lot of series of projects, like we have one coming up right now called, it's our Explore It series. It's like a 30-day project, like I was talking about before, where you pick something you want to do and commit to every day for 30 days. And you get to pick what that is, but you share it on social media, but it has to be nature based. So it's like the goal is to
Okay.
just get outside
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do something creative with nature. So like I've done a process painting before where I've taken a canvas and I'm going to a new place every day. I'm finding a shadow and I'm painting the shadow on top of each other.
Okay.
30 days. So that's like an example of stuff. We've done Unity projects, which is we had 30 artists sign up, come together. And it was exciting because there's people who were not quote unquote artists, right? People who were like, I've never done art in my life. And they made some of the most beautiful stuff. But we ended up like randomly tripling everyone up. Like you got paired with two other people.
Okay.
And this is the group. Like some of them were total strangers, some of them they knew each other, but these are the other two people. We're going to give you this big canvas and you're all going to work on this canvas in phases. You're going to get this canvas for a month. You're going to pass it on to somebody. They're going to work on it for a month. Third person, now you're going to work on it for a month. So beginning, middle, end.
Yeah.
And what are we creating? So it's that idea of forming community, but also igniting this idea of creating in any capacity with people, because we believe that the more people are creating and engaging in that type of expression, that mental health will improve, but also leaning on each other and building social community helps improve mental health. So we have two things going on at the same time under the Start umbrella.
Nice. Very cool. Yeah. I've only been able to talk with Dima through email at this point. I was doing an interview with a friend of mine who I met in 2014 out at a art conference in Orange
Okay.
County. And at the end of the episode, he's, you know what, you should connect to my friend. She has this therapy group. And I'm like, oh, that would be very interesting. And I was like, all right, boom, connected. And then she's like, maybe you should talk to some of these other people first.
That's what I mean. She's a community person. She's
Yeah.
a sharer. She just wants people to be connected and share with one another. And that's definitely a strength of hers. For
Yeah,
sure.
absolutely. The as we wrap up here, I wanted to just remind the audience, like I always try to do, and again, your story is beautiful because it ties in perfectly with the way that I end everything, is that you listen to your internal self, listen to your heart throughout most of your life and the transitions that you've made. And so I want to always remind the audience to listen to their heart, but also be kind to their mind.
Yes. And your body.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
your body. And that they're
Thank you,
connected.
Lindsay. I
You're
appreciate your
welcome. It
time.
was so nice to meet you, Rich.
Yeah, I think this would be great for the audience.
Good talk. Very good talk. It was nice to hear a little bit about you too.
Yeah.